Hey, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Adrian for always putting this together. Paul, you've been up here for 3 hours. I don't know how your retina is standing this light. And Ali, I always want to thank you for fixing and helping us around the world. I always call this guy at 2 in the morning saying, I need your help, and he always says yes. So for those who I don't know, my name's Hunter. I work with Orbis. And I'm not going to talk about innovation. My ears bleed when I hear that word. I'm going to talk about execution. Just show of hands, who's heard of CyberSight? I can't really see hands, but like 2 people, 3? Okay. So if you're not listening, just go on and download the CyberSight app. It's the world's largest distance learning platform. We're in every country in the world except for North Korea. Our whole goal, and I've heard a lot of people talk about this in earlier sessions, is to globalize and democratize both education and technology. CyberSight, this is just a quick schematic for 2024, peaked over 108,000 registered users. And what I love about it is, just like it takes a village to give a child their sight back, it involves every part of the patient care pathway, whether it's optometrists, ophthalmologists, nurses, biomedical engineers, anesthesiologists. You'll see that every month we got about 5,000 people registering for courses. And Paul can attest to this. He gave a webinar and he had over 85 countries watching live. We are the world's largest library for glaucoma, and a lot of people in the audience, like Dr. Cahook, have been contributors. What I'm going to talk about today is our in-house AI platform. We built it over 6 years ago, so I'm going to try to talk about it in 6 minutes. As opposed to machine learning, where a lot of companies go in and extract data and don't contribute back to the community, we've trademarked the term machine mentoring. The whole purpose of our algorithm is to walk people through the diagnostics so that a technician in a tier 3, tier 4 city can actually not only give a diagnosis and a prognosis, but also a referral. And we've done randomized clinical trials in 5 countries. One of the other things that I'm really proud of is our e-consult platform. And so we've done over 4,000 consults. This is not a grandmother asking about their grandchild's glasses. This is someone treating pediatric glaucoma for the first time after an Orbis program, wanting a doctor help them. Do I do a goniotomy, a trabeculotomy, et cetera? Whenever they submit a consult, they get an AI interpretation within 30 seconds, and they get a curated library of the topic that they're asking about. And so, one of the things that I'm really excited is that now with over 7,000 resources in glaucoma, we can actually tailor what that person's asking about. So normal tension glaucoma, they get about 40 reads and they can pick and choose. And then the AI is also interpreting a 2-paragraph snapshot of what they need to know. So we're using AI in 2 ways. Again, I'm not talking about innovation, I'm talking about execution. One is diagnostics, the other is for information analysis. So this is one that is not glaucoma, I realize, but we also do a lot with inherited retinal diseases, and one of the cool things is not only are we able to pick up macular anomalies, but the mentor, who's a human, can not only give their opinions of what's going on, but then we pull books and lectures from the CyberSight e-library to help that person. This is a glaucoma case. One of the things when you submit a case to CyberSight AI, the algorithm's first 2 things are whether or not the image is crisp and gradable. The other is whether or not it was taken properly with the macula and optic nerve. So for those who, I don't follow football, I've never watched an American football game, but there was a dude who used to be the coach of the Raiders, and his quote was, "Just win, baby, win." So we launched a randomized clinical trial during the height of COVID, and the name of it was Raiders, Rwanda Artificial Intelligence Diabetic Eye Referral Study. Basically, this was a randomized clinical trial held by Dr. Chiku Matenge, who's one of my heroes in ophthalmology. What we looked at was the patient satisfaction, provider satisfaction, and the referrals for someone who was diagnosed by AI in the rural hinterlands of Rwanda. Long story long, 30% higher compliance with referral. We did another randomized clinical trial in Bangladesh. Again, we're not trying to extract data. We're not trying to prove sensitivity, specificity, and area under the curve. In Bangladesh, we were in a retina hospital where literally it's 2 doctors serving a massive population. What we looked at was physician productivity. By doing upstream AI, the retina physician productivity went up 40%, and the procedural volume went up 248%. One of the things that is very challenging about glaucoma AI for those who are in this space is if you ask 10 glaucoma doctors, what is this? You get 11 different answers. One of the things is, just like AFib, you have irregular interpretations. One of the things I love about AI is it's very consistent. And so one of the things we've shown is that our AI for glaucoma is as consistent as human-to-human interpretation and is more consistent. We actually did blinded studies where our graders were re-shown images, and the discrepancy between images was quite vast. With AI, it was consistent. So this is some of the details if you want to read about this in the paper. Obviously, I've got 55 seconds left. I think one of the things I always want, I don't like compliments. I think they don't make you better. What I would love from this group is thoughts and criticisms of how we can better use glaucoma, not to diagnose and adios in the low to middle income countries which we serve, but how can we get it to better assist that one ophthalmologist serving a million population. So these are what everyone always asks about. What are the numbers? You can read the numbers here about the area under the curve and sensitivity and specificity. I think it is comparable or equivalent to commercial products. You can download the app, as I said now. It's just Cybersight, CYBERSIGHT. You can download it for free. You cannot use the AI or the referral or e-consult here in the US. And that was everything we've been doing for 6 years with our in-house algorithm. I certainly want to again thank the Adrian and the panel for this opportunity to speak about our work. I'm super excited about where we're taking Cybersight. I never thought we'd be reaching over 100,000 users. As I said, what I love are benevolent haters. So if anyone has some feedback or a criticism, please let me know. My name's Hunter Cherwick, and I think that was my 6 minutes of fame.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. First of all, thank you to the organizers. I've been coming to this meeting since I left UCSD and joined industry and joined Heidelberg Engineering going back to 2012. So it's really an honor to be up here, and I appreciate the opportunity. You know, this is our vision, and it's very similar to every other company's vision. You know, how do we improve access with, at the same time, improving quality of care and doing it in a cost-effective way? So how we're going to achieve that, our strategy, our tactical plan and mission is called Healthcare from the Eye. It's a broader initiative, and I'll talk about how this drills down into glaucoma as our first strategic introduction into this field. So first of all, Healthcare from the Eye is really the cornerstone of it is how do we take ocular data and analyze it, including with AI, and extract insights, health insights, so not just eye insights for eye diseases, but also systemic diseases, and the implementation of that to the clinic and bringing it together in a connected care system is really what we call healthcare from the eye. How do we take it to the patients and connect primary care to optometry and ophthalmology, and making sure that this is all done in a digitally connected environment with devices and data being interoperable and accessible and transparent with EMRs and payers and across these different healthcare providers. So we have a platform called Harmony. It's a cloud-based platform that allows us to do this. It's really a delivery platform that allows not only AI to be brought to patients in a safe way, but allows all these different stakeholders and providers to have a digitally connected environment. And if we can do this, again, in a cost-effective and secure way, then we'll be able to enable early detection, increase access to care, enhance the quality of care, and most importantly, decrease the cost of delivering that quality care. So we're deploying a lot of these robotic devices that we have, and it's really important to have robotics, to have OCT angiography, fundus cameras that are fully automated that can be deployed even outside of eye care to start catching disease. And this is what we call pre-screening. You're there to do something, you're there to have a blood check, a blood pressure check, and you can do a quick scan and start detecting diseases, whether in your you're in primary care or pharmacies or in eye care to detect systemic diseases or eye diseases. And once we are able to do this and really leverage oculomics as a science behind healthcare from the eye, then we need to make sure that we can get these patients to the right point of care and at the right time, and to do it in a digitally connected environment. So by doing this, I think it's going to be very important to empower the right providers and healthcare professionals to be able to receive these patients. We've already started deploying a lot of fundus cameras in primary care for diabetic screening, for diabetic retinopathy. Very soon, there's going to be glaucoma and AMD screening, and we need to empower not just ophthalmology, but optometry to be able to receive these patients and to be able to triage them, screen them, and send them to the right point of care. But to do that, we need to be able to put the data and information that clinicians use to diagnose patients and screen patients and triage patients together in a very secure but an automated way. So our Harmony platform, it doesn't matter whether you have a Topcon device, a Zeiss device, a Heidelberg device, our goal is to automatically connect this information to each other and to EMRs, and then to be able to deploy this information in a systematic way and deliver it to patients and to doctors so that they can start looking at information in a more standardized way. As Hunter said, you give several glaucoma patients to several glaucoma specialists, and you would get many answers. Now, imagine putting that in the hands of non-experts, an optometrist that has just come out of school, or even an ophthalmologist that has just come out of school. It's very important that we provide a very systematic way, and that's very robust in terms of sensitivity and specificity, but also, as again Hunter said, that we can calibrate the threshold of when you refer those patients, and to do it in a way that is fully transparent. So it's not a black box environment. You know how these risk scores have been calculated. And this is something that I've been trained to think about since my UCSD days with Felipe Medeiros and Bob Weinreb, talking about the OATS risk calculator and other risk calculators that have been coming out. Our mission is to digitize these, make them vendor inclusive, doesn't matter which EMR, which device you have, and how do we bring them to the right points of care so that they can be deployed cost effectively and seamlessly into the clinics. And so this is something that we're releasing this year, working with the FDA on it, but this is going to be the first of a series of risk calculators and dashboards that we're going to release, including the OATS risk calculator. The OATS risk calculator was a very powerful tool, but it was just not practical in real-world clinics to implement or apply to every patient. But if you have all that information automatically curated within EMRs and OCT and visual field devices, then I think it's going to become a very powerful tool to be able to instantaneously and in real time offer it to patients and to doctors. And then we can add other things to it, OCT and other diagnostic metrics, and make it more and more robust. So our mission is really to figure out how to take these the data sets that are out there, doesn't matter which technology or which device they come from, how to create these multimodal risk calculators and scores that allow the non-experts to make more consistent decisions across the board. And finally, we will start with a screening risk calculator for glaucoma. It's actually a series of risk calculators, but we're going to expand this to many other diseases and go from screening to prediction and prognostics and monitoring. And you'll see a host of these come out. And as I said, we're working with the FDA and other regulators to make this accessible very soon. So thank you again for having us here, and I'm really excited to discuss how we can improve our vision and mission of delivering healthcare from the eye, starting with glaucoma as the first application. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the organizing committee for this opportunity. So we'll be talking about how can we use AI in a clinical trial setting, specifically for glaucoma. These are my disclosures. So what the questions here that I'll try to answer, what are the tools that are ready to be used? Not just hypothetical, but it's out there that you can start using for our clinical trials. How to avoid the AI just for AI fallacy, when people just want to use AI for its own sake. And in what areas does it really make sense to use AI and not what's currently available? And I'll start with a case study, a hypothetical 2-year neuroprotection trial using AI. So the first situation, patient selection. I want to make sure those patients indeed had glaucoma. And as many of you may remember, a long time ago, that's how we looked at glaucoma, defined glaucoma in clinical trials. 2 experts looking at images and trying to come to the agreement whether the patient has glaucoma or not. And we know from before it's not a good way to define glaucoma, especially when you don't know what is glaucoma. So there has been a strong effort to define glaucoma more objectively, started by Dr. Quigley at Hopkins. And basically, the general principle is that you have to combine structure and function. And when the two are present, you're more likely to have glaucoma. And Felipe and his team were able to use that principle, training AI to look at OCT and visual field, looking when there's agreement between structure and function, and then show to the computer an optic nerve, and will show you the likelihood that the patient has glaucoma, and this was shown to be have a very good performance. Another situation, sample enrichment. We published this paper a year or 2 ago on how you could design a clinical trial in 2 years for neuroprotection. And the 3 main principles that apply are clustering of visual fields, comparison of MD slopes between groups, but primarily sample enriched with fast progressors. And how are these fast progressors identified? This is a paper from our group in collaboration with Harvard and Hopkins, in which we looked at visual fields at baseline, 1 or 2 visual fields, and tried to predict the likelihood of being a fast progressor. We found a moderate to good performance to detect those eyes, and that's one way you could look at those and find those patients for your trial. Better than that, you can use a structure, disc photos, and OCT to try to predict the progression on the visual field. The group at UCLA has done that, so the machine can look at disc and OCT and give us the probability that the patient actually has glaucoma, so you have real glaucoma patients in your trial with a very good performance. And what I think is very interesting is nowadays there are companies, some of them listed here, that are able to mine through EHR and OCT to look for patients who are eligible for your study in combination. So I could potentially just plug in the data, like I need patients between this and that age group with moderate visual field loss who have been active for the past 2 years in clinic, and find them in your charts more quickly for your clinical trial. The third situation is data management. We know that inconsistent or suboptimal data collection can be costly, adding time to your trial, and the cost of each day delayed in your trial is very, very expensive, as you can see here. So another solution for that, this is a company that started with oil drilling, and now they're doing a great job in medicine in general. And basically, the principle is that given the high dropout rates that patients have, and also missed visits and out-of-window visits, the solution is to go through the electronic data to find out the patients who are missing those appointments, send them reminders, and have an AI agent to navigate the patient through the clinical trial, minimizing the risk of loss of follow-up and missed data. There are also ways to use AI to improve your data collection, to be more error-free without the human error. And this is based on capturing this data from the source documents, also EHR, sending patients questionnaires and reminders that can be used for the follow-up of these patients. This is a case study. This was done in a clinical practice in which the practice grew very fast, and they were starting to see a lot of missed appointments for intravitreal injections, as well as visits outside the window. And just by implementing a system of that kind, they were able to improve the time decrease the number of patients who were missing their appointments and had missing data. Also, another implication in terms of data management and statistics is the so-called adaptive clinical trials. This is something that's already available now with AI. You can use it also for your study with sample size optimization, especially if you have like a multiple doses that have been tested, potentially shortening the duration of your trial and saving money. And finally, endpoint determination, very hot topic. We know that the FDA has typically proposed the use of visual fields as primary endpoint, and more recently they seem to be open to use of OCT or NFL as long as you demonstrate a good correlation with their accepted endpoints. And the main question when looking at OCT is differentiating change from glaucoma from change due to aging. So you have a patient who loses RNFL over time from aging, and you need to differentiate that. And Felipe and his group were able to develop a model that looks at those images on the OCT and are able to detect progression even 6 months after a baseline test, differentiating from age-related changes. And this is also available by different reading centers nowadays. They offer different possibilities to explore this data, including correction of segmentation in cases of errors in the OCT. So in summary, there's nothing new under the sun. Remember, we started by reading tablets, then we start to reading scrolls, to finally books, and nowadays we scroll through tablets to read books. So there's just a lot to be done in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have the pleasure of switching gears now to talk about natural language processing for ophthalmology in 6 minutes. This is a special topic that is particularly of interest to my research. So here we go. I have no financial disclosures or conflicts of interests. So the landscape for natural language processing, or NLP, has changed quite a lot in the last decade. It has become ever more capable of complex tasks, while at the same time exploding in the need for computational resources. And this is not a new field per se. Since the 1950s, we've had the ability to do basically advanced text searching using regular expressions, finding different kinds of words, and processing the text. But to do more complicated tasks using modern modeling techniques, we really need to compute or do math on words. And since the early 2010s, there has been a number of ways to compute over words, culminating in the modern large language models, or LLMs, that are taking over our society in the last few years. So why is this so exciting for us? There is so much health data that is sequestered in the free text clinical notes that doctors write every day that hasn't, until now, been really easily accessible for research or analytics. So now with natural language processing, we can get at things like adherence or other kinds of notes that doctors make about patients. But each of these methods can handle different types of tasks and require different computational resources. So the key is to match the task to the method. So for example, when we wanted to evaluate all our glaucoma surgical outcomes at Stanford, we used natural language processing to analyze the operative reports, find the laterality of the surgery, find the implant that was used, whether it was an IOL or a glaucoma implant, using very basic regular expressions, which is advanced text searching. And this method was really close to 100% accuracy on this task. So it works really well for regular structured text like operative reports or implant models. And it doesn't work that well for text that requires context for understanding, like negation or family history, things like that. But still, you can go pretty far, and using this kind of natural language processing, you could almost instantly analyze outcomes of all glaucoma surgeries at our institution over 10 years, sorting out all the different kinds of glaucoma implant types. But to go beyond analyzing historical outcomes in aggregate to directly predicting an individual patient's future, predicting which glaucoma patients will progress and need surgery, instead of picking individual types of information out from the notes, we could do computation over the entire note and use all the rich information stored in there to make our predictions. So for that, we need to do the math on the words. We have to convert the words to a numeric representation that captures their meaning. So you can kind of see this on the left for regular words like man and woman, where vector coordinates can kind of capture aspects of their meaning. So in our group, we created our own ophthalmology word mappings, and you can see vector representations of words related to POAG clustered together. This is very computationally efficient, and you can use this to build lightweight models to predict visual outcomes with really good accuracy. But we moved on pretty quickly to the next generation, or BERT models, bidirectional encoder representations for transformers. And these models came out in 2012, and they were a huge leap in performance for natural language processing tasks. They can take into account sequences of words, begin to understand the context, and handle diverse kinds of vocabulary at about 345 million parameters for the model. So we use these models on clinical notes in our electronic health records to predict which glaucoma patients would progress to require surgery. And all these models did far better than a human glaucoma specialist reading the notes and trying to predict the future, because predicting the future is very hard. But if we look at explainability studies, that's one of the advantages of this kind of model. We can still reassure ourselves, oh yeah, the model is looking at clinically relevant data, like the age and the type of glaucoma and the drugs that are tried or not tried, right? So that's highly reassuring. So we've gone beyond this since then to integrate the structured data and the imaging data to build even better models to predict the future, but there's still a lot of work to be done in this area. All right, so how about the modern large language models? Everyone wants to hear about ChatGPT. How does this compare, right? So we went back to the basics on the large language models to compare them to the earlier generations, to the BERT models, to the text searching, to do really simple tasks like read ophthalmology notes and tell us the visual acuity, tell us what the slit lamp exam is, tell us what meds they were using and on which eye. These kinds of tasks, if we could do them, well, it would make it much easier to find the right patients for research studies and track outcomes over time through routine clinical care. So on the orange bars, you'll see how the large language models did compared to BERT models or text searching. And, you know, they did okay, right? The main advantage is actually that they need much less data to achieve similar performance, although the performance is not always better. If you use a bigger model, it does get better. But, you know, none of the approaches are really approaching human-level perfection for this kind of extract visual acuity task. So there's still a lot of work to be done there as well. LLMs are much more suited to generating long-form text-based answers than to extract information. So we fed ChatGPT a few hundred ophthalmology patient questions in all their malformed glory and asked ChatGPT to answer them. And, you know, the answers are actually generally pretty good, except when they weren't, and when they would say things like cataract surgery causes your eye to shrink, and other things that are like nonsense, right? But if you ask a panel of mass ophthalmologists to look at all the human answers and all the LLM answers, actually, you know, on balance, the LLM doesn't do too bad, sometimes maybe even a little bit better than humans. So this is really where the LLMs shine. They're great at generating text. They're great at doing tasks when you don't have a lot of data to train a model, but you have lots of compute power. Extracting very specific pieces of information predictably and accurately is not so great, and the jury is really still out on whether it can directly predict future outcomes like we tried to do with those BERT models earlier. That's not really what they were trained to do, but maybe with some modifications we can progress in that area. So hopefully I've shown you an overview of different NLP approaches for different tasks, their pros and cons, cut through some of the hype, provide some realistic expectations. The key is, again, to match the task to the technique and to do the right validation for that task. Thanks so much for listening. I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks to organizers for the invitation. And thanks to my previous and current lab members and also funding agencies. Here are my disclosures. So artificial intelligence broadly can be defined as the simulation of human intelligence, which is carbon-based, in machines, which is silicon-based. And it's a group of technologies that can sense, hear, read, search, just name it. So for ophthalmologists, it's actually the use of machine-driven systems in eye care to enhance decision-making and also to improve patient outcome. And it matters for physicians overall because it can increase accuracy, it can improve efficiency, it can enhance access, and it can advance research. And I'm going to talk about some of these in the later slides. So I'm going to just go through an overview, a quick overview. Everything started from 1940s and then until 2000s, that databases and also models just got matured. And then in terms of ophthalmology, everything before 2016 was more complex conventional models. Then deep convolutional neural networks, or in short CNNs, were introduced. They can take the image and then make the diagnosis on the fly. And then in 2020, we had transformers that said, okay, they can be even better than CNNs. And then the foundation models that are based on transformers, and then large language models that pretty much all of them are based on transformers. So in glaucoma, these models can be applied in a screening, in diagnosis, in prediction or forecasting, progression monitoring, personalized treatment, and then outcome improvement. That I'm going to just talk about any of these by papers that have been published over the past few years. So screening diagnosis together. This is the paper that was published by Mingguang He team, about 50,000 fundus photographs, and then 12 graders. Then this model, the area under the RC curve, was close to 0.98. Excellent performance in diagnosis or screening. This is a paper by our team. We used oats and then used close to 50,000 fundus photographs. Again, we reached an area under the ROC curve, the blue curve, which is 0.95 Again, good accuracy for screening and diagnosis, and these are the regions that the model thought are more important for making the diagnosis. Then a paper by Linda Zangwill team in UC San Diego, and they used, again, OATS data and also a number of other data sets for independent validation, and then compared CNNs with transformers. On the right, you see the CNN performance. And then on the left, you see the transformer performance. Pretty much transformer, this was the conclusion that the transformers generate a more generalizable model compared to CNNs. Then last year, we organized a challenge with Rotterdam Ophthalmic Institute. And in this challenge, that was part of the ISBI conference in Greece, we, based on a data set of 100K fundus photographs for training, and then 2 independent data sets, one with 10K fundus photographs for testing, we ultimately came to the conclusion that the teams that you see above, most of them reached this level of accuracy. So pretty much for a screening and diagnosis, this could be a level of glaucoma detection, and 95% specificity, and then 85% sensitivity. So for prediction and forecasting, is it possible to forecast something that happens in the future? So it's a paper that we published, and we collected 2 sets of data sets, subsets, 4 to 7 years before glaucoma and 1 to 3 years before glaucoma, and then we showed that yes, it is possible to predict a glaucoma, forecast glaucoma with area under the R-square 0.88 for 1 to 3 years prior to disease development, and then 0.77 for 4 to 7 years. Linda Zangwill team also published a paper, and pretty much they achieved the same level of accuracy based on the same data set of OATS. So this is another paper that published last year. This is based on large language models. We asked that, is it possible to just provide the clinical parameters and then ask the large language model for predicting or forecasting glaucoma, and this is for 1 year prior to disease development, and the level of accuracy was reasonable. It's still not close to CNNs, but it just generated a reasonable outcome. So we transformed all of those tabular data to prompts, and then automatically just fed it to ChatGPT and then got the outcome. So let's move on to progression and monitoring. This is a paper that published 2020, and based on 13,000 visual fields, we just grouped them to different clusters. Each cluster has similar patterns of visual field, and then when we had a look at the MD, we just realized that, oh, they are very nicely organized. For example, from right to left, you see that the mean deviation just gets worse and worse, and for those at the bottom left, they are at the end stage of glaucoma, while those at the right, they are at the earliest stages of glaucoma. So the model could be used for monitoring patients. And this is a patient, a sample data from a patient, and then even it is possible to compare 2 different patients, which one is progressing faster. This is another paper that that was published by Dr. Medeiros and team on OCT. They used OCT data to detect progression, and they were able to detect progression better than global or sectoral parameters. This under paper by us on the OATS data set, and then this is what the OATS team, visual field readers just came up with of patterns of visual field loss, but we could just run that in a fraction of a second with an unsupervised machine learning model, and then we even found out that this pattern can predict future rapid progression. So these are the papers published for progression, and most of them before 2020, they are based on visual field, while the papers after 2020 are typically based on OCT, and then before 2020, typically conventional machine learning models, and then after 2020, they are CNN or transformer. In terms of personalized treatment, a number of papers on PRS, they have shown that the PRS has a good correlation with POAC severity, and also if we combine PRS with other parameters, they can predict glaucoma. And there are a number of papers that also Sophia Wang also just discussed about some of those in using EHR for detecting progression to surgery. And the foundation models actually are the latest models for They can be used for glaucoma as well. These are two examples in ophthalmology. It is possible to train these models based on unlabeled data and then fine-tune them based on, for example, glaucoma detection. So in conclusion, AI is perfect for glaucoma. Why? Because glaucoma is complex, imaging intensive, no single test to pinpoint it. And then there are a lot of intra and intervariability for grading, and also no solid reference standard. However, there is no yet FDA-approved autonomous AI model for detecting glaucoma. Just transformer models are very promising. Models like RedFound are also very promising to be used in glaucoma. And with that, I'm going to conclude the talk.
It's great. Thank you so much, Simon.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Alauddin Bhuyan. I'm the founder and CEO of iHealthScreen. iHealthScreen has several softwares based on AI for screening and early diagnosis of retinal disease, and also prediction model for stroke and heart attack. So here we'll be focusing on the AI and color fundus-based glaucoma detection model. Okay, so what problem we are solving here is the screening, right? In America, like there's a study funded by NIH. It showed that in some areas, for diabetic retinopathy, 50% of the patients are not screened by the ophthalmologist, even though their primary care physicians are urging them to visit. Eventually, they have insurances, but they didn't go because many reasons, right? They're busy tomorrow, many reasons, right? No time. And one day we got this problem of the blindness, and then we start screaming. So this is the same case for glaucoma, and consequently we know by 2050, number of glaucoma patients will be double based on its current number, like around 3 million to 6 million, So this is the problem we are trying to solve here, like get this patient from the primary care, and using this ambitious goal, using the color fundus image, and detect the moderate to severe stages, highly accurately, and send them to the glaucoma specialist. So I think, like we all know, this is an AI-based software. We upload the images to the cloud-based platform so that it can be used anywhere, everywhere. And then we generate the report, if it is advanced or moderate stage of glaucoma. So whole focus is making it highly accessible. First, we can do the screening using a fully automated camera without dilation in the primary care settings in less than 5 minutes time, finish the procedure and get the report in front of their primary care physicians. So how we are doing this? We are dealing with the individual markers for glaucoma, cup disc ratio. This is the traditional one. Peripapillary atrophy, disc hemorrhage, nasalization, overall structure or fractal dimension of the vasculatures. This is the deep learning model, EfficientNet. If you're familiar, this is very light, very fast to train, and one of the top accuracy. That's why we use this one. And here is the exact model what we used. And the way we actually dealt with, I think we mentioned that we looked into the individual risk factors, and then build the model based on the individual risk factors, and then combine them to get the high accuracy. Here is the one data set from UK Biobank we used, which the subjects which has color fundus images. And we achieved 92% accuracy, over 92% accuracy here. And then you can see AUC 0.92. In the ARIES data set, which are self-reported glaucoma subjects, so there we achieved above 94% accuracy. And the Auriga Lite, those are all publicly available data sets. On Auriga Lites, it's 94% accuracy. And with the REAM1, I think this is where I would like to stop a little bit. While we have the early, moderate, and deep glaucoma, the others is like glaucoma, non-glaucoma, ARIDS or UK Biobank. Here, we detect the glaucoma versus no glaucoma, and this is the accuracy, 86.71%. For early glaucoma, we had 12 subjects, and out of this 12, we could detect 9. For moderate, we could detect 13 out of 14. And the deep, advanced stage of glaucoma, we could detect 14 out of 14, That's what, in giving us the hope, this courage to go with the color fundas. We are doing also with the OCT, combining them, where we can achieve really high accuracy. But using color fundas, I think we can also do this, especially the advanced and moderate stage of glaucomas. With the papilla data sets, which is a little bit better, that early or suspected glaucoma was 77.5% accuracy, and moderate to severe glaucoma, above 94% accuracy. These are we looked into the individual, features, if it's peripapillary atrophy, disc hemorrhage, cup to disc ratio. Cup to disc ratio was the best in terms of only the disc area. It was almost, let's say, 79% accuracy. If we combine them, it's almost 92% or higher accuracy, in this data set. And another interesting thing is if you put the entire image, the system may be a little bit confused. The accuracy decline a little bit, around 75% accuracy. I think I'm not going to go through this. I can share you the slides. We have a patent in this area. This is the first patent, based on these individual biomarkers and combining them, detecting glaucoma. So I'll be stopping here. Our next plan is reached out to FDA, get the clearance, and we are open for collaboration. If you're interested, I'm happy to talk. Thank you very much for your attention.
How many of you use ChatGPT on a regular basis here? Okay. What about OpenAI's operator? Okay, great. One. All right, good. You'll all be hopefully raising your hands next time I'm here, that you're all going to be operators or operator users. So let me start off by talking about our company. We're Tilda Research. We are an AI teammates company for clinical research. And my background's been a computer engineering background, but being an entrepreneur on the tech side for a few years. The previous company before Tilda, I was a biotech founder, and got to see firsthand all the challenges we were facing in terms of running a clinical trial, getting a molecule from, let's say, a university outsourced program into the clinic, and ultimately creating data and commercializing. So I've been through an interesting set of vantage points, and most recently I've also worked as a clinical research coordinator at a site as part of my learnings with Tilda. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you about what we've done and where we're going with this. So before I do that, right, I do want to start with something which I truly believe is going to be happening. I'm thinking this is happening as of now, not in many years to come. So this is a benchmark which I talk about, which is called AIQ. And what this is measuring the augmentation of AI within an organization's workflow. So today, most of clinical research organizations, whether it be sites, sponsors, or CROs, they all very much stand at that, the today line, which is basically close to zero. There's hardly any real AI being implemented today in operationalizing workflow as of today, right? And I think this is going to change really quickly because the paradigm where you're what I call an HI-only organization, human intelligence-only organization, is very much not going to be the case in the near future and in the next many years to come. And the shift will be happening into this exponential curve, and the organizations who are able to adapt and move on to that are going to be the leaders into the future. They'll be much more productive, they'll be much faster, they'll be much more scalable, and they'll differentiate themselves as well from a quality perspective. So one of the reasons why I truly believe this is from a timing perspective, we're at the right point is because as Tilda, we've been working on models and various workflow management in the clinical research space for several years. We've been building for several years, but we were all essentially waiting for what just happened at the end of 2024. And one interesting way to look at it, well, this is not the benchmark. I just wanted to give you a sense of what it is like from someone who's actually in the trenches right now. This is a benchmark called GPQA Diamond. And this is a set of questions which you essentially measure an AI against and see how intelligent is it, right? And these questions are PhD level science questions across math, physics, chemistry, and biology. And what happens is to solve for these questions, you do require something called reasoning, and advanced reasoning. And that means you have some kind of an inner monologue where you say, OK, in order for me to answer this very challenging question, I need to think about many different perspectives. I need to come from point A to point B to point C, and then eventually maybe like point D, and then you get your answer, right? So there is a monologue truly, and we call it chain of thought, and that's really like where some of the big breakthroughs are coming from an algorithmic perspective today. And what is really exciting is while we were building and training our own AI teammates, as recently as January 2024, you can see some of the data points there. Most models, the frontier AI models, were scoring somewhere in the 20 to 30% accuracy range on something like this. Now, in December 2024, right before Christmas, we had OpenAI come out with O1 Preview, which is a preview model for their first reasoning model, coming out at 70%. And the contrast is 20 to 30% is considered basically random guessing. If we all took random guesses at this particular benchmark, we'll score about 20 to 30%, right? End of 2024, we were at 70%, which is basically expert human level. And even more remarkable is somebody asked us about DeepSeek R1, and DeepSeek is a Chinese company which came out with a reasoning model, but with what I call an algorithmic breakthrough. They have something called reinforcement learning with a novel reward function, and they're scoring above O1 Preview at 71. And just last week, we had OpenAI come out with O3, which is their latest reasoning model, which is at 88% on this benchmark. And you can look at several benchmarks, and we are seeing this happening. We're seeing these exponential curves in intelligence coming through. And this is why I believe we are not going to be in the current state anymore, right? We will absolutely be working with AIs in a very dynamic, collaborative, in a completely different world than where we are today. And that's kind of what we're building right now at Tilda. So what we do is, as I said, bringing AI teammates to supercharge your team. And what we've particularly focused on are operational issues in clinical research. So these are issues, things like what your coordinators might be working on, what your data managers might be working on, what your project management might be working on, right? So there's several areas where that can be a challenge that doesn't scale really well, and it's a highly variable type of a workflow which differs based on the teams you have. And what we've done is created AI teammates which have certain tools which they can use. For example, they can use a computer, they can use a phone, they can use an email, they can text, and they can also learn. And so they can start building on these workflows and being proactive. So these are some roles which we have right now, which we have implemented. And just as a quick example, we launched last quarter, and we have done quite a bit of work, and we're building on the ophthalmology franchise right now. This is just an example of some remarkable results we've seen with a company called Opus Genetics. It's a public rare disease company. They have a CRO named Mintra Health. And the 4 AI teammates which we onboarded, you can see them there: project management, data management, regulatory, and quality. And effectively, that brought down their ability to bring 7 programs into the market, or at least make themselves operationally viable to do that, and reduce the cost of their studies, as well as reduce the timeline in which they were able to run these trials. This is probably my favorite example. We work with several ophthalmology research sites as well. So this is Dr. Fox in Grand Junction, Colorado. He's at Icon Eye Care. They run a prolific research program, and last quarter they had a staff churn. And we got introduced, and we said, hey, how about you try some AI teammates, right? You could obviously hire more people and then sort of scale that way, or we could help you here. And we brought in 3 different AI teammates into his clinic, a data coordinator, a quality associate, and a finance specialist. And these are all augmenting his existing team. It's just adding a lot more bandwidth and sort of like normalizing the quality which they'll have, right? So what we saw has been pretty remarkable. I have a graph here showing close to 200 plus visits, which our AI teammates have worked with alongside their team. And you can see a 90% drop in the query burden, the amount of time they've spent on managing their queries and the amount of time they've spent managing the data itself has dropped dramatically. The average closing time from a query perspective went from 2 weeks to just 2 days. And I think overall, we've added about a 1.5 times FTE equivalent productivity into their clinic right now. So this is what we see as sort of the early adopters, right? Icon, Opus, Myntra, these are all the early organizations going on this AIQ curve right now. And Tilda is about enabling that shift in AIQ. So thank you.